Hello! We're going to look at a series of books that I first read as a teenager. So we're going back 40 years, and it's a series of children's literature written by Susan Cooper called The Dark is Rising Sequence. And it's the only fantasy series, or indeed any series of books I know that's called a sequence. So it's made up of 5 books, and I have 2 sets here because the first set is really what sparked this off, because I saw a picture of this book here, The Dark is Rising, and it sparked all kinds of memories. This cover here is just delightful. So when I saw that, it sparked this desire to read these books, and I thought, well, now that I'm on BookTube, why don't I read them for my channel? That would be kind of fun. And so that's what I've done, and I've read them a couple of times actually. So I got this set by searching on World of Books, I think it was, and looking for a full set, which you can see I've got, and ended up finding them from a local seller who lives in the same village on the Isle of Arran where I live, just along the road. She had a full set of all 5 with these covers that I so covet, and so I got in touch and I bought them. These covers are illustrated by Michael Heslop, and I'll go through them all with you. The first book, Over Sea Under Stone. The second, The Dark is Rising. The third one, Greenwitch. The fourth one is The Grey King. And the fifth one, Silver on the Tree. And as I was reading through Greenwitch, look what happened. Yeah, that got me feeling a little bit concerned. So I went online and I bought a set of new copies, new editions. And these covers I love too. Look at that. It's just great, isn't it? It's illustrated by Joe McLaren. Book 2, The Dark is Rising. Book 3, The Greenwitch. And 4, The Grey King. It's just great, isn't it? And the last one, Silver on the Tree. So I'm delighted to have both sets actually. But let's go into the sequence and I'll let you know my thoughts. So first of all, the background to this is that when I was probably 3rd year at high school, so around about 14, I can remember sitting in English class. When the teacher wanted an easy lesson, he would say, let's have a reading lesson, and you would sit and read a book for, I think at that time periods were 40 minutes long. Maybe they had already been extended to an hour and 5 minutes. I can't remember when that happened, but it happened at some point when I was at high school. Anyway, the teacher would tell us to go and pick up our books, and we would sit and read quietly while the teacher would have a skive, which is a Scots word for an easy time. And I remember distinctly reading The Dark is Rising. So in my head, it's winter, it's cold and wet and dark. The English block was an old sandstone building with really high ceilings, fluorescent lights that buzzed, and it was damp. It was always damp because our jackets were wet and we'd just come in from the cold. So I imagine that scene with these big cast iron radiators along the wall windows all steamed up, teenage hormones flying around the room, and sitting there reading about Will as he comes into his destiny as an old one when he turns 11. And we get winter scenes. It's set at midwinter, and I know that there are lots of read-alongs online where people read this particular book at midwinter, which makes perfect sense because it's just so evocative of that time of year. And in that book, it follows the character Will Stanton as he becomes an old one on his 11th birthday, and that means he's a character with magic powers. He's part of a legacy that goes back thousands of years of old ones who are guardians who protect the world from the dark. And you'll have surmised from the title that as we go into the story, the dark is rising once again. So Will is actually the last of the old ones, and he's the sign seeker. So it's his job to seek these elemental signs: water, fire, earth, stone. I can't remember them all now, there are 6. Bronze, I think, was another one. So he has to go around looking for these signs, which are little kind of tokens that he ends up keeping on his belt. So he's the sign seeker, and he's helped by another old one called Merriman Lion, and he's basically his teacher. And so there are some kind of magic elements to this story. It's kind of gothic in a sense, or maybe not so much gothic. It's very English. It feels very English, quintessentially English, in a kind of folklore sense. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for rather than gothic. It's more folklore. We've got woods, we've got a house in Buckinghamshire, which is south of England. We've got the dark with characters who are quite scary, actually. It's a terrific book. It's got even kind of some Arthurian themes going on in it towards the end. I don't want to spoil anything, so I won't go into any more of the plot than that. But it's a very evocative book. It feels very, very winter, very dark, very Christmas. And following this young family it's a great winter book. And you may have noticed that I've started this video by talking about book 2. That was the first in the series that I read as a teenager. I did go on and read the rest, but not in order. And you can do that quite happily, because book 2 has no relation whatsoever to book 1, other than one character, which perhaps I shouldn't spoil. So let's have a look at book 1. Book 1's a very, very different book. If The Dark is Rising was a winter book, Oversea Under Stone, it's very much a summer book. And this one doesn't really have any magic elements. It's more of an adventure story. It follows these characters here: Barney, Simon and Jane, who go on holiday to Cornwall. And they go to a village called Trewissick, which is made up, but I believe is based on a village called Mevagissey, which is where Susan Cooper used to spend her holidays as a child. I've been there, it's a beautiful little place, and so having been there, when I read these scenes of these kids running around down at the harbour side, and the smell of the sea and the heat of the sun and the village vibe, I can feel it. I really can feel it. And that's the strongest feeling that I get from this book. Same with Dark is Rising, it's all about winter. This one's all about summer and Cornwall and the vibes of that place. If you've never been there and you read this book, you will really feel like you have been there, because it's written quite vividly. And they spend a lot of time, these kids, on a Grail quest. That's ultimately what the book is about. And they find an old map up in the attic of their holiday house, which is called the Grey House, and it's a treasure map, so they end up looking for the Holy Grail under caves on the beach. And the dark in this book comes in the guise of a boat that's moored off the shore, and there's a man and a girl on the boat. They come for dinner at the Grey House, and they invite the children off on an adventure out on the boat. And they, turns out, are trying to get their hands on the Grail as well. So it's a bit like a Scooby-Doo mystery in some ways. That's what it made me think of, actually. So yeah, we follow these three kids on their adventure. So it's a typical kind of young adult or children's literature adventure story, a bit like maybe The Famous Five or something as well, if you can imagine that, which are books I read as a kid as well. So it's just got that vibe about it, and it's again quintessentially English. It's kind of glimpses of Arthurian legend in there, and there's just the summer scenes in Cornwall. It's just, you know, it's so evocative and vivid. So yeah, there's one character in this that shows up again in all the books actually. So there's a kind of through line with the character, but other than that, it bears no relation to The Dark is Rising at all. And I enjoyed this. You can read this alone just as a thrilling adventure story. Won't take you long. It's delightful.
It's delightful.
Dark is Rising. We've got our dark story following a different family, and then we get to the Greenwitch. This is a short one, and when I first read it, it was actually the one that I didn't enjoy quite as much as the other ones, but I watched some reviews online, and some people whose videos I really enjoy said that this was their favourite book in the series, and I was like, maybe I'm missing something. So having recently discovered that audiobooks are not working for me quite as well as they used to, I came to the conclusion that that's perhaps what was going on here, because I did listen to all of these on audio. They're all narrated by Alex Jennings, apart from The Grey King, Book 4, which we'll get to. And they're narrated very, very well. It's just for some reason it wasn't sinking in, so I put it down to that. I bought this, as I said, my reading copy, because this one here was falling apart. I didn't want to read that. And I read it again and made some notes, and yeah, I was wrong. It's a strong book in the series, and it's kind of the one that combines everything together. It brings Will Stanton together into the world of the Drews, Simon, Jane and Barney. And they're back in Cornwall again. So it's interesting how, first of all, the relationship between these characters starts to... Well, it transpires that they don't like Will Stanton. Will Stanton doesn't have much to do in this book, actually. He does have one big thing that he does, which is important. But the rest of the book, he doesn't do a great deal. He's kind of a bit arrogant, I think you would say. He's a bit aloof, standoffish, arrogant, because he's an old one, and the other kids are just kids. That's kind of the vibe that you get. And so the Drew children, they don't take to him at all, really. Although they're living in the same house, they're back in the Grey House again, but there's a division, there's a partition. So there's like a upstairs, downstairs or something like that. But there's a door, a little secret door that joins the two houses together. So they end up living in the same house. And this cover, by the way, I just adore this cover. Picture of Jane standing on the headland. So this one has got, again, strong English vibes, strong Cornish vibes, and some paganism. So the Greenwitch is basically what would you call it, a sculpture. It's a tradition in the village that the women get together on a certain day and they put together like a cylindrical dummy of a female character. So this is the Greenwitch. It's made of hawthorn and hazel, which inspired me to think, oh, this would be quite interesting if I were to send this information to a guitar maker that I know who enjoys making guitars out of English woods. Wonder if this could inspire an English guitar if we were to use the symbols from the 6 signs as some kind of inlay or decorative pieces, and then have the back and sides be hawthorn, or is it holly, or rowan, hazel. I don't know. That's what it made me think. It would be delightful to get a guitar that was inspired by the Dark is Rising sequence. So Rosie or Adrian, my 2 English guitar making friends that I know, yeah, have a think about that. That would be interesting. So yeah, that's the story of the Greenwitch. They build this dummy, an effigy, that's probably a good word to use, and they throw it into the sea just as dawn is coming up, the sun's coming up, and the fishermen are coming back in from their night's work. They cast this effigy out into the sea, and in this book Jane plays a big role. So up until this point she's not had much to do. In this book she really comes into her own, so she plays a part in this, which is, it's really well done. I really loved how it was done, and it does reference the old magic or the wild magic. So you learn that there's kind of a hierarchy to the magic system. It's very much a soft magic system, so you never really learn what the rules are, other than that there's dark and there's light, and then there's something above that, something that doesn't really care about the dark and the light. It's irrelevant. So kind of universal, beneficent, godlike being. I don't know how you would think of it, but it did make me think of the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, because in those books we have the wild magic, which is triggered by the white gold, which is the ring that the main character wears, Thomas Covenant. And incidentally, it's why my wedding ring is white gold, because, you know, why would I not? So the wild magic in that book is kind of outside of time, even outside of space. It's something bigger. So we get a reference to that in this book, and that's the bit where Will comes into his own. He has a bit to do there, so we'll leave it there. It's a fun book, and it's a very short one in the sequence. It moves on to The Grey King. This was my favourite. This was the most fun, and this one was narrated by someone else whose name I forget. Let me just tell you. Richard Mitchley, who I didn't know, but I imagine he's a Welsh speaker, because this book is set in Wales and there's a lot of Welsh in it. In fact, there's a scene in it where they discuss Welsh pronunciations, where one of the characters is teaching Will Stanton how to pronounce words in Welsh. And this book introduces another character, a new important character called Bran. And in this one, Will is going to Wales to convalesce. So at the end of Greenwich, he's not feeling well, and so he goes to Wales to convalesce with an aunt, and his aunt lives on a farm, so he goes to help out on the farm over the summer. And we again get kind of folklore, paganism, superstition, and some pretty dark characters, actually. The characters in this are great, and there's a dog as well, which is a great character. So once again, we're thinking of the Secret Seven, Famous Five, Scooby-Doo. There's always a dog, right? So this one goes into the Welsh mountains. We've got Welsh farmland, we've got Welsh weather, lots of rain, sun as well. We've got lots of hawthorn and bushes and woods and fields, wolves. We get some wolves, which is what we've got in the cover here. What do we have on this Grey King cover? We've got the dog. The dog's called Cadfael, and he's great. So yeah, it's a great sequence, and Bran and Will end up going off into the mountains where they have a job to do. They've got to save the mountains from the Grey King. So the Grey King's the baddie, he's the dark. And again, we've got more sort of Arthurian legend coming into it. So again, we've got that strong English feel, but also the Welsh feel. That's a massive part of this book, the Welsh culture and language, and that all comes into it. Geography as well in a big way, as Wales is full of wonderful mountains, so we get some of that. And again, it's just very evocative, you know, it's just such an enjoyable book in the sequence. Which leads us to the last one, Silver on the Tree. And I think now, having read Silver on the Tree twice, once again that audiobook problem I've mentioned came to fore, and I had to read the book again, this time physically. And I think I would say it's my least favourite in the sequence. And that's because I found it a wee bit busy. I thought that there was a lot going on. It did satisfactorily tie up the sequence. The ending was good. It just felt a bit busy. There was a bit too much going on for me. So in this one, we've got all the kids again. They're all back involved in the storyline. And we've got Merriman Lion, once again, the old professor whom we met in The Dark is Rising. Is it a spoiler to say that he's in them all the way through? Probably not, no. He's the main character through all the books. He's the single character, I think, who's in all 5 books. And we meet him in the first book as Gummery, Great Uncle Merry. So the kids call him Gummery. And then in the second book, he's Merriman Lion. So he's the old one who has all the books. So yeah, he's in this one, and we get to sort of midsummer, and there's a quest where the kids all have to go to this tree which will grow a single, what does it grow? A single apple or something? Or a single silver apple? I can't even remember. You'd think I would remember this. I haven't read it twice. But yeah, it's so we've got the dark and the light, and you remember we've got the element above that we talked about, so it's kind of like the dark and the light come together in conflict, and then there's like a judgment that has to be made. So I can't really go into any more than that. We revisit characters from the Grey King, so ones that weren't introduced until the Grey King, so they become a very important part of the ending, which is interesting. Yeah, I think it works. And we've got all the kids. We've got Will Stanton, who's off doing his thing with Bran. They've got an important role to play. We've got Bran's parentage comes into the story. We have to figure out where he's from, who his parents were. We've got more Arthurian legend. We've got a scene where Bran and Will go off to a place called the Lost Land, and they have to do a quest. It's like a side quest in the Lost Land and bring them back. So they're trying to gather all the things of power. So there's a harp, which they got in the Great King. There's a sword, which they get in this one. There's the 6 signs. So yeah, all of these things of power are required to complete the quest. I suppose in that sense it's a bit like a video game in some ways. This might make a good video game. So yeah, I wouldn't say it was disappointing, I'll just say it was a bit less enjoyable, but still satisfying. I suppose that's how I would put it, Silver on the Tree. So yeah, publishing wise, these came out in the 60s and 70s. The first book was 1965. The second one was not until 1973, so there's quite a big gap. Then we've got 74, 75, and the last one coming out in 77. So I was around for the last one. I was born in 71. I wasn't around for the first, just the first one. But as I said, I didn't read them until I was at high school, and I'm delighted to see that these books are still in publication. They don't feel like any other fantasy books that I've read, and I've read quite a lot. They don't feel that anything has been influenced by them. They don't feel derivative. They're certainly their own thing. There's no ring, there's no talisman of power. Well, there are things of power, but not one single thing to rule them all. We've got great characters in all the kids. I think perhaps for me the weakest of all the kids is Will Stanton. I think he's not used particularly well, I don't feel. And that's interesting because he's the most powerful one. You know, of all of the characters, I'd say my favourite one is Jane, particularly the role that she plays in Greenwitch. I think that's just superbly done. And little Barney, he's fun as well. He's like the annoying little brother who's always getting into scrapes, and there's a scene that comes to mind in Oversea Under Stone where he's getting chased by the dark character and he has to hide in a bush, and I just loved that scene. And there's another scene with Barney and Simon where they get kidnapped and they're in a mobile home caravan kind of deal. This would be in Greenwich, yeah, in Greenwich. Where Barney's out painting and he meets a painter who's out painting the landscape in Cornwall, and this guy turns out to be a baddie, and so they end up getting kidnapped, him and his brother, and they're in a caravan, and the scene there is really interesting, especially when they go back to the caravan later on in the book. Also very interesting, so I love those scenes. But I think my favourite thing about these books is the way that they evoke the place and the season. It's just so powerful. It takes me back to, you know, as a young kid, reading adventure stories and magic stories, and which is exactly what I did with these when I was a kid, you know. So to revisit that as an adult it's just delightful. It's absolutely such fun. So much fun, in fact, that I'm going to do it again with the Lloyd Alexander series. I'm going to be doing that very soon. The first book of which is called The Book of Three. That was one of the first fantasy books that I remember reading as a kid, apart from Enid Blyton's The Enchanted Wood and The Wishing Chair. And The Wizard of Oz. Yeah, I read those two. The Book of Three is the first of 5 in a series, following a character called Taran, based on kind of Welsh mythology, so a little bit of what we get in The Grey King. There's a kind of tie in there, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading them. So if you want to hear what I think about them, it'll probably be next year, I think, before I get to them. But honestly, maybe if my mood takes me, I might just pick them up for the summer, because that seems to be how I roll. That's what happened with The Dark is Rising. I ended up just binging them all unexpectedly because they weren't on my TBR, and all of a sudden I saw this image of this cover, the one I showed you, The Dark is Rising, which is now at the bottom of the pile. I mean, look at that. How evocative is that? Just wonderful. So I found myself reading them unexpectedly and having a great time. I would recommend them. I definitely would recommend them. Even though I said Silver and the Tree was the weakest in the series, that's not to say it's a weak book. It's still very enjoyable. So yeah, if you want to support the channel, I'll put links down below in the description, and get these books using my affiliate code, which will help the channel with a small commission if you buy them using that link. And I will put links to Amazon, which will be localised to your region, Blackwell's, bookshop.org and Waterstones. So it'll be a single link which will give you the option of where you want to go to buy these books. That would help me out a great deal. Otherwise, yeah, let me know below. Have you read these? Would you like to read them? If you have, let me know what you thought, because I would love to hear from you. I'll see you again very soon. Cheers. Bye.